Slovenia with Penn Patriots Radio show of pushback for August 1st, 2020. And I'd like to welcome you today to the 138th day of the 15 days to slow the spread. Congratulations, you survived. So, I'm here today with my friends Robert Noor and the great Todd Bartlett. And we today will be talking about many, many different things. But I want to start with this. The one feeling that I think that everyone will agree is repugnant is when you discover that you were naive. And there's a difference when you just don't know anything and you discover you're naive. And having good faith in something and discovering you were naive. And let me explain to you what I mean by that specifically. Robert and Todd and I are people that we're not those type of people that pass by the television when we get home from work and watch 5 minutes of the news and say, all right, honey, shut that off, let's eat and, have our meal. Or we're someplace and we see 5 minutes of CNN or something on TV and consume it. And we're not regular, normal consumers of news and media. We are full bore, full-time media consumers. So we're not the regular people, okay? Regular Americans catch can their news. And I think that we've been asked as a country to have good faith in the things that people say. Trust the experts. You're being told that this is good for you. And Dr. Fauci is an expert and he's 79 years old and knows what he's doing and he's at the top of his field and all these relationships and he knows everybody internationally and everybody knows him. So imagine when I hear yesterday in the congressional hearing and he's being grilled and the question is, do you think that these protests are creating more people getting sick? Okay, it was asked a couple of times. And we were asked to have good faith. And as people that Robert and I and Todd, we consume a lot of media, we try to have good faith. None of us think that this is fake. We think that the news around it is fake, but none of us think that this is fake. Like we said last week and the last couple of weeks, where we've been kind of digging down in the story of COVID, we've been drilling down on it because how we understand it is that for the people that have real problems with their immune systems, and also the people that are older, this is more dangerous than the flu. But for regular people, it's not as potent as the flu. For regular people who have regular, healthy diets and their immune systems are in check. So on certain people, it's really dangerous, and certain other people, it's not as dangerous as the flu. We can agree to disagree on that, but that's basically where we are right now. And Dr. Fauci yesterday answers the question by saying that he's not equipped and he's not a professional and he doesn't give opinions with regards to what should be done regarding COVID and protesters. And he wouldn't call them protesters. And I'm okay with that. You don't have to call them protesters. We know, right? We know what they are. No one has to tell us what they are. Okay. This whole entire exercise in the last 4 months is people that support these anarchists and these communists and these Marxists are going out and trying to convince us all of who they really are, but we already know who they are. So when he took that position, it shocked me. I know, it's amazing, right? Someone as cynical as I am, it shocked me because I got that same exact feeling that I get when I'm naive about something and I discover that I'm naive and I feel stupid. Dr. Fauci lied to us. It was in full splendor in front of Congress. Dr. Fauci lied. Because you know, right? You know that he's been talking, right, forever about the things that we should do and the things we shouldn't do and the things that we should do, and then back and forth and back and forth. See, when you move off your position, it's not the very best idea to do that if you want to engender trust. If you want people to trust you, people of good faith, Americans, you can't lie to them. So we're not going to be told what to do by anybody that consistently changes their mind and isn't honest enough to call balls and strikes. I'm stealing that line from Chief Justice Roberts. If you can't call balls and strikes, okay, and yes, there's a tie into baseball today, and Todd will update you on the baseball stuff that's going on with COVID. But if you can't call balls and strikes, you don't have an entity that's trustworthy. This is where we are on August 1st. That the people who are supposed to be the leaders and the cultural and political and scientific elite can't get their act together. And they expect us to believe them. You need to make sure that you decide for yourself. The Constitution says so. So I'd like to introduce to you my very good friends, Todd Bartlett. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, gentlemen.
And the great Robert Knorr from Clarion County. Robert.
Good morning. Thanks for being here, everyone.
So here's my question. August 1st, 2020, do you think you ever get here? As we look at our country and what's happening internationally and nationally and locally and statewide and in our local, hyper-local communities, we look at the virus and the anarchy that's happened in this country. The question that I pose to you today is the following. It's a three-part question. Whose fault is it? Who responded most directly and urgently to the threat of evil against us? And who's going to fix it without flinching? To you first, Robert.
Okay, so who caused it? Now, this is a difficult question. One of my favorite movies is the movie V for Vendetta. I love that movie. There's a scene at the beginning where they're having this tyranny that's going on, and he gives this big presentation where he says there are people that are more responsible, and that are the globalists, the establishment left, that we see are seeking to destroy the middle class. Look, for them, they are intentionally politicizing this virus because they want to destroy the economy. They want to make normal Americans' lives as painful as possible so that they think they could go out and win an election because people will blame Trump and will blame the conservatives. So certainly they're responsible. But in reality, just like in that scene for V for Vendetta, we're all responsible. All of us, if we look in the mirror, could see, you know what happened? We became complacent. Over years and years and years, we allowed the lies to continue. We kept voting for people just because they had the right letter next to their name. Even though they didn't care about normal America, they threw them under the bus year after year after year. And we accepted it. And we accepted all of these cultural institutions indoctrinating our children, indoctrinating us when we want to watch entertainment, indoctrinating us when we sign up for social media platforms. We accepted it over and over and over again. And when you accept those small infringements on your rights, inevitably it crescendos, and that's what we're seeing. So to answer it, I think you could see that the people that cheered for the lockdowns, the people that are politicizing this to destroy your Bill of Rights, they're responsible, but we're responsible. You know, some of us more than others, but I admit I wasn't as vigilant as I should be. I was telling people at the beginning of this, Carlos, in March, I said, this is a disaster. People are willfully giving up their rights without forcing the government to answer all of these basic questions. Once we set the precedent to allow this, it will only get worse year after year. That's exactly what we're seeing. So that's one. Second, the second part was who's doing the most to try to stop it? Was that right, Todd?
Who's responded most directly and urgently to the threat of evil against us? Now that we have the problem,
right?
What has been the response by people that are supposed to protect us and lead us most directly and urgently to this evil against
Nothing. Not like the Republicans. What have they done? There's a handful you could look at that have actually stood up for this. The vast majority of them are concerned about winning re-election, and they don't want to take some position that they feel would, get them targeted by the radical left. So just like with the riots and, the race relations that we see, they're afraid to speak up. It's the same with COVID. It's easy to just go along to get along, and that's what most of them are doing. And so they're so concerned about their own political power that they've thrown us under the bus. The people that are actually putting their reputations on the line, which we'll get to later, are like the doctors that are actually treating COVID patients, that are putting themselves out there, risking losing their medical license because they're advocating for possible cures like hydrochloroquine. They're talking about the misinformation that we saw from places like the World Health Organization, the CDC, and Dr. Fauci. And for that, they have nothing personal to gain. They just care about the people of this country. And so they're risking, but few and far between will you see a media person or a politician, even on the right, that is actually doing the right thing. And the last part of the question was, what can we do from here? Correct? Carlos giving these 3-part questions to start off.
Who's going to fix it?
Who's going to fix it?
Unflinchingly.
Yeah.
Unflinchingly, who's going to fix it?
It has to be us. It has to be us, the individuals. We as individuals need to say, we will no longer accept this tyranny. And we need to go from being a, quote, silent majority to being a vocal majority that says, we're not going to take the obvious hypocrisy and lies. We're not going to trust experts that on one hand tell us, sorry, you have to lose your job. Sorry, you can't go to your grandparents' or parents' funeral. Sorry, you can't go to your daughter's wedding. Sorry, you can't go for those treatments you wanted at the doctor. All of these sacrifices, you can't go to church in many areas. We're told that we have to sacrifice all these rights. Well, I just watched John Lewis's funeral. That doesn't apply to anyone in Washington, does it? I just watched the mayor of Chicago go out and get a haircut while she told you weren't allowed. I just watched all them continue to collect paychecks and be able to go to their jobs. And I watched them and the medical experts say, just like Dr. Fauci, hey, COVID's a bad deal, but you know what could kill even more people? White supremacy. So we have to cheer for these riots and protests from these left-wing domestic communist terrorists, and we have to act like they couldn't possibly spread the virus. So it's clear that our leadership has failed us, and so it's up to us as individuals to stop accepting this tyranny and stand up for our rights as our founding fathers would have.
Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Carlos. It's time for me to reclaim my time.
Wait, I'm reclaiming my time.
No. I'm reclaiming my time.
Okay. So, to you, whose fault is this?
I really agree with a lot of what Robert said. It's all of our faults for being sheeple, right? Mm-hmm. For listening to it, accepting it just because they said so. Remember when mom and dad would punish you and you'd go, why are you punishing me? Just because. Well, we're going to tell you to go back in your homes. You can't go to church. Can't do this. Can't do that. Why? Just because.
Right.
So it's on us.
And your experience of that, using that example, is because That's what the governor has been saying to you in front of in all the press conferences.
And the Secretary of Health and a lot of the cabinet, and they're ignoring a certain story that we'll talk about later on in the show that they don't want to comment on, which we'll get into later.
So part 2 of the question is, who's responded most directly and urgently to the threat of evil against us? In your view, from your view, and your viewpoint being one of being a journalist and being in the media, what have you seen?
So you're more than welcome to pick me apart on this arrogant answer that I'm about to give you, but me.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yep. Us.
I directly challenged the sovereign power of the governor. I directly challenged the sovereign power of the Secretary of Health and their orders and their duplicity in this and their hypocrisy about you can't go to church, but I'm going to go march in something that I believe in outside with a mask, non-socially distancing. And it made national news. So I would argue it was me.
You know, we didn't even discuss it in the pre-production meeting. This is pretty good, though. You know, doing it live in the air and revealing it this way. You're absolutely right. It was you.
Yep.
It was absolutely you. I don't think that, and you know, I had a conversation with Robert about 2 months ago, and he said, you know, the coverage that Todd's doing on COVID, it not only do I not see it anywhere in Pennsylvania, I don't see it anywhere in the country. Was that the quote, Robert, or something close to it?
Absolutely.
So, that being said, Todd, who's going to fix it without flinching?
I got to tell you, and this is going to sound really, really bad, but I'm going to use the analogy of if I can compel the Attorney General with my reporting to investigate the Myrtle Beach case, apparently I've got to fix this problem too.
Yep.
And I'm going to bring all my friends in government and all the powerful people with me so we can fix this.
Yeah, because
it's not going away. I'm sorry, it's not going away on
Right.
August 1st. It's not going away on September 1st. You know when it goes away? After the election. It's
Right.
miraculously going to go away if their guy wins, right?
Right.
If you think it's going to go away if the current office holder keeps the job, 21's going to look worse than 20.
That's the deal that the Democrats are offering, right? The
Right.
deal is we will burn everything down. We will make your life in
Win or
every
lose.
possible way as horrible as possible. Unless you vote for us, and then it'll all go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's
But
terrorism.
see, that's the kicker, though, Robert. It's not going to go away.
Right.
It's going to get worse.
Right. You have to vote for them in perpetuity. You have to give them supreme. Any little defeat that they suffer at this point, they will come out. They will riot. They will cancel you. They will use all of these institutions that they've corrupted to make sure you can't go to church, you can't meet in person, to crush the economy. It's going to get worse. Like right now, we have to either stand up and say this is not acceptable, or we cower and say, okay, please stop abusing my life. I'll give you power. Just leave me alone. We'll deal with it later. We'll never deal with it later. Once we give in now, this is the new norm. They will win every election or they will burn this country to the ground.
Right.
Guys, and again, let me put the comment that I made earlier in some context. And people are like, oh my gosh, he's just so over his skis and he's arrogant and he's, you know, all these kind of things. You're more than welcome to say that. But if you have a loved one in a personal care home or a nursing home and you haven't been able to see them or go in and give them a hug, even with a mask on or any of that kind of stuff since this all started, I'm fighting for you. Believe it or not, you had to postpone your wedding. You had to reschedule it. You couldn't have more than 25 people there. I'm fighting for you. And there's some personal anecdotes that I could give you from now to the end of time of some things that have happened since COVID started that family members, you know, have engaged in, I've engaged in, and we're all still here. We're all still here, taking precautions, but we're all still here. Why? It's not that it's not real, but if you're vigilant and you take the precautions and you don't put yourself in harm's way, you got a pretty good chance of surviving the virus. By the way, I yield back my time to the primary host, Carlos Sadivia.
Reclaim time, yeah.
What Robert said really stuck with me because now that we are 4 months removed, slowly accepting these minor infringements has really rolled up into something really bad. This week is the week that I started to hear of many, many businesses going out of business forever. This week is the week that I started to hear whispers from the CDC or actual posts from the CDC that say that drug abuse and drug deaths and suicides are higher than the deaths of COVID. Did you guys see that story? You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I saw it. Now, just to be clear, this is for young people, right? They're not. The director of the CDC is, I believe, saying that the 150,000 that have died for COVID, he's claiming that number is accurate. He's not saying more than 150,000 people have died from these other things. What he is saying is, once you get to a certain age, like 21 and younger, that the population that have died from COVID is far less than those that have died from suicide, domestic abuse, substance abuse, and things like that.
So that's a number that's less than 1,000, correct?
Yes. And so he said this in the context of, I'm not going to get his direct quote, but he said this in front of Congress. It's something to do with this. This is almost verbatim. He said, I cannot stress this enough. As the head of the premier health organization in this country, the CDC, it is imperative that we get our K through 12 children back to schools on physical locations. The health risk to them is more severe from keeping them out of schools. Now, despite that, the very people that told us at the beginning of this, you can't question Dr. Fauci. You can't question the Imperial College model. You can't question anything the health experts say, or you need to be censored. And we see this, people being censored from Twitter, from YouTube, from other places for questioning these people. At all of that, you have to trust science no matter what. Now, when the science says the exact opposite of what they want to hear, they totally ignore it. And so the Democrats, the teachers' unions, all of them are pushing, nope, we don't want to go physically location back to school, despite the fact that every study around the country shows that the regular influenza is more of a danger to children than COVID. In fact, I challenge anyone, find me one story anywhere in the world of one proven transmission from a child in school to a teacher. Show me one. There hasn't been one. There is no science behind it. And yet they still push. And this is how you could tell that it's political in nature. When you have the experts that are saying things like, oh, you can't go to work, but it's okay. It's a bigger threat than the virus, white supremacy. So we're allowed to have the mass protests that are violating social distance orders. And then when you have the same people saying, oh, and we have to always listen to science, except when the science goes against what we want. And then we ignore that science. That's how you could tell that the reaction to this virus is totally political.
Right, and you can decide for yourself. You know, once you start watching the clip with Congressman Jordan interviewing Fauci, you start to realize that it's not about politics anymore. It's about the fact that you feel naive because you were fooled, you were lied to. You just completely, totally lied to. On that vein, we don't really know the primary mode of corona transmission. Okay, everyone says that they know, but we really don't know what the primary mode is. Okay, even on August 1st, 2020. So, since they have no solutions, they only have fear. So, wear a mask, shut up, and wait for a vaccine.
Carlos, they admitted they lied to us.
Right.
Who else in your life would you implicitly trust and say, oh, I won't ask questions of them when they tell you, hey, you know what I told you last month? Yeah, I lied to you. But it was for your own good. But now trust me. Trust everything I'm saying now. Don't question what I'm saying now. Right.
Trust me now, not then. Right. So, which is like a cousin parable to the boy who cried wolf. So the question begs to be asked, Todd. What is the difference between a quack doctor who goes on TV in a craven attempt to be famous at any cost and Dr. Fauci?
Well, yesterday, when you're asked pointedly by a member of Congress, Mr. Jordan, from, ironically enough, Ohio. OHIO, go Bucks, which they're not going to be playing either. But that's another story for another show down the line. Anyway, when you're on the hot seat, as Dr. Fauci was yesterday, and we can get into another hot seat moment that was earlier in the week here in Pennsylvania, but we can talk about that later in the show. Fauci was asked directly by Representative Jordan, do protests cause additional spread of the virus? I've never seen the guy that flummoxed in my life. He refused to call a protest, and then tried to frame it in large gatherings, large crowds can cause the spread of the virus. However, he never said stop protesting. He never called it a protest. I thought it was one of the most disingenuous exchanges between two government officials that I've seen in history. So with that, Dr. Fauci, you can resign. If you don't, I think the president has every measure and all the evidence he needs to fire you.
I'm not saying I'm an expert on Donald Trump. I grew up in the era of Donald Trump when I lived in North Jersey. So I grew up, and I think that I understand him, okay, a little bit better than someone who grew up in California and knew him peripherally. I don't know how he survives not getting fired after what happened yesterday.
I mean, that was a joke. That was an insult to our intelligence. That was an insult since this whole thing started.
Well,
I mean,
like Robert said, it was a lie.
Oh, my goodness. And now he's talking about you need to wear a face shield, you need to do this, you need to do that. Where was all this stuff 4 months ago?
Hey, but you can go on Tinder and solicit sex from strangers and have sex, and it's all okay, but you can't shake hands.
It's just.
It was this 20-second visit he had to the office, and the door was locked. Again, 22nd times in a row. So my question, beyond the irony of the fact that the president won't use the power that the Democrats so freely will, why should the Republican Congress or the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania show up to work at all? Because if they all stay home, there's no quorum, so nothing can get done. Wouldn't that be exactly what the governor is doing?
I mean, the fact that there'd be no quorum is irrelevant because Wolf will just do what he wants anyways, right? I mean, Wolf does it. That's the whole point. They don't need the legislator. Tom Wolf is king. He's dictator. If you're in New Jersey, Murphy is king. Whitmer is, the monarch. She's queen. That's the way it is. Legislation doesn't matter anymore. And it's not just those institutions, by the way. We saw this when Obama was in charge. Obama was king. He chose not to enforce laws.
How does voting fix that?
Well, you have to win the executive, I guess.
Well, for some reason, Robert's audio has gone awry for the moment.
Oh, you guys can't hear me?
There we go. Now it's back.
Yeah. So how does voting fix that? The fact that these guys have fiefdoms that are bulletproof.
Well, you have to vote for people that are willing to understand that First off, I guess you have to win the executive branches, so you have to win the governor seats, you have to win the presidency. Second, you need to vote for people in legislature that aren't utterly and completely worthless, like the majority of the Republicans we see now, that are more than happy to have no power whatsoever, as long as that means they keep collecting that government paycheck and they are secure in a job. That's all they care about. And so you have to start voting for people that are willing to abide by constitutional principles, whether it be our federal constitution or state constitutions. And it's going to take decades, because another problem we have is when there's a dispute between the legislative and the executive branch, who does it go to? The courts that are overwhelmingly biased against the constitutions and for the power of the left wing. So most important, voting does matter. It does matter to get people in. And just because they have an R next to their name doesn't mean they're worthwhile. The majority of them are terrible. I don't care if it gets me in trouble with the Republican Party, which I'm a member of. I don't care. It's the truth. When the chips are down, they're not fighting for us with COVID or with these domestic terrorists called Black Lives Matter. They're not fighting for us.
Other than on the state side, other than Diamond and Mastriano,
right?
Name one Republican. Name one Republican who's fought and done anything to push back. One Republican. Todd, can you name one?
You just named the two.
Yep.
That's it. So it didn't start this way, right, Todd? It didn't start this way. It started really because in a presidential election year, anything that happens in that year is about the presidential election. Okay, that's rule number one. So it really started this is really about the fact that there are 5 governors in the United States that are basically auditioning for cabinet seats in the Biden administration. Isn't that so?
I would agree.
Well, I think it's more that but they don't have to be auditioning to act like this. They're auditioning for something more. You see, politics is downstream of culture. What Tom Wolf's auditioning for isn't just, hey, I hope I get a cabinet seat. I'm sure he does. I'm sure that's part of it. But the audition's greater than that. The audition is, please don't come for me, mob that I created. The audition is, I want to be in with the cool kids. I want to be in with those that will be the movers and shakers once we move beyond the limitations of the Constitution of the United States. Make no mistake about it. This is about destroying the United States, ushering in an era of globalism where these people have total and absolute power. And so the audition's for that. It's not just for the cabinet measure. And that you see this audition being made every day by people in positions of power, even not in the political world. This is what LeBron James is doing. This is what Alyssa Milano's doing. It's all their audition to say, see, I'm a good globalist. I'm willing to go along. I'll ignore the abuses that are going on to weaker Muslims in China, says LeBron James, who has business deals with them. But I'll advocate destroying the systems in the United States by cheering for the terrorist group Black Lives Matter. LeBron's not working for a cabinet position. And I believe that the same's true of Wolf, Whitmer, Murphy, all of these governors. Sure, they'd take the cabinet position, but it's something greater. They understand. The politics of it's almost irrelevant at this point. When you totally control all of the cultural institutions, the politics becomes irrelevant.
But isn't it really, and since you've been in front of the governor, Todd, and you've been around him, and it isn't really, more than anything, isn't this really being driven by fear? I mean, even Democrats, right? Even Democrats are surprised when they see these things, even though they deny that they happen. The denial is based on the fact that they're terrified. So, like, how does Congressman Nadler defend himself if the mob comes after him? Like, there was this guy who came up to him while he was waiting for his limo, that just walked up to him and asked him a question. He has to be concerned, right? That if 50 people walk up to him, they could do a lot of damage. All of them are afraid. Not just the Democrats and Nadler. All of them are afraid that the ultra left wing of and I think it's beyond left wing. These are just anarchists. They're not in my mind on the political line of left and right. They're they're extrajudiciously outside of it. Does that make sense, Robert?
Yeah, and there's also a wing of communists. But yeah, sure. Yep.
Right. So there, and listen, I floated this idea. I don't remember if I did it in the show, but is it fair to say that some of the have any one of you guys read any books by Robert Ludlum? You know, he's the spy thriller guy, the Jason Bourne guy.
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
Okay, so I've read almost all the books, and ongoing.
By the way, is there a reason we're looking at your yearbook picture instead of you?
The idea that goes throughout those whole entire books is the fact that the government is really kind of part of the bad guys. Okay, and you can't really trust the government. Okay, you never know if you can trust them. Do you think that somehow, some way, Justice Roberts is actually a mole for the left, given his actions? Or is it the fact that he's just afraid that he can't protect his family and that the FBI can't protect him, so he rules in a way that the mob won't come after him? Is that a legitimate possibility?
May I, Robert, and then you can reclaim your time or my time,
Okay.
however we're doing that now. The thing for me with Judge Roberts, and tell me if I'm wrong, was he not spoken directly to during a State of the Union address about signature legislation and how dare you and don't dare you and all that kind of stuff, and then absolutely split the atom with something that was so really open and shut of what it should have been, that we are where we are now with most of his decisions?
Well, no, he didn't split the atom. He decides which cases adhere to precedent and which cases don't.
Well, no, with Obamacare, instead of voting or instead of ruling to close it down, he called it a tax.
Right. No, I hear you. But lately, his fallback judicial position is that he's going to decide when he's going to allow precedent to be part of a case or a judgment, and when he is not going to allow that. So in some cases he allows precedent, and in some cases he doesn't. And that's really what the bottom line is. Okay, throughout the whole entire legalese and confusion of these decisions, especially the DACA decision. Do you really think that the American people are going to buy the fact that one executive order from one president is legal and the other executive order from another president is illegal because you didn't file this case in the right way? Do you really believe that Americans are going to believe that excuse, Robert? I mean, really?
They will. That's the worst part. I mean,
we were told works.
Right. They will. They'll believe it because we lost the cultural battle. They control the narrative. So Americans will believe it. Just like Americans believe. I can't tell you. And look, I hope we get to talk about this later. There is a difference when I'm talking about Democrats that run that party and the extremists in that party versus my friends that are Democrats, right, that aren't running. I'm not saying those people are horrible people, but many of them who are normal people, intelligent people, they believe, for example, this. They believe that Donald Trump's responsible for 150,000 COVID deaths, and he's responsible for the collapse of the economy through the shutdowns. Now, any objective person could look and say, how could you believe those two things simultaneously? The argument with COVID is he didn't shut down enough. The argument with the economy is the shutdowns were bad and crushed the economy. Yet they believe it. Why do they believe it? Because despite the fact that anyone could take 15 seconds and say, oh yeah, that's ridiculous, they're fed that every day, a steady diet, by every piece of media they consume. And so they believe it. Just like they believe DACA's legit, but an executive order to end DACA is not legit. It's literally that insane. And real quick to answer your question about Roberts, I don't know. It gets back to this old chestnut, which I'm blue in the face. I'm so tired of having to argue this with people, not in this show, but just in general. Is it incompetence or is it corruption? Did the FBI, was Russiagate incompetence? Like we're supposed to believe? Oh, FBI members didn't know that they weren't supposed to manufacture evidence to say the opposite of what it said. Whoops, just general incompetence, or were they corrupt? At the end of the day, the end result's the same. So maybe Roberts is just an incompetent boob, and that's why he's making all of these decisions. Or maybe he feels threatened because he sees what the mob could do, and he saw what happened to someone like Kavanaugh's and afraid that they could come after him and his family. Or maybe they have specific dirt on him, and they brought that dirt to him and said, we will release this unless you vote our way. And then lastly, maybe he looked back and saw what happened to Nemo. What was his name? Supreme Court Justice that probably got murdered. Scalia. Maybe he just doesn't want Scalia, right? Maybe he saw what happened to Scalia and said, I better toe the line. I don't want to, die in mysterious circumstance and then have everyone say, oh, but you can't question it. We just have to accept it. So I don't know what it is, but it's quite clear that he's not a conservative and that his rulings are unbelievable. I mean, just look at Gorsuch's dissent in this Las Vegas case, where basically we're now told the largest, the most important court in the land has ruled you could have 50 people in a casino standing shoulder to shoulder holding that slot machine arm, but they can't be standing 50 people shoulder to shoulder in a church singing praise to God. It's insanity. And anyone with half a brain cell could see, wait a minute. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the theme that I keep going back to. We have trusted the experts for so long, and it's in every aspect of our life. We trust the Republican politicians to do the right thing. They don't. We trust the medical experts to be doing the right thing. They're not. We trust the climate scientists to be doing the right thing. They're not. None of them are. We've been told all of our lives, trust the experts, and they are politicized liars. Not all of them, but the ones that are controlling most of these institutions. And so I don't trust Roberts. I don't trust that the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing. I don't care if Trump gets 4 more justices and appoints 4 Republicans. I don't trust that that court will do the right thing because we have been burned over and over and over again. And I'm sick and tired of having to talk to people on the left that say, oh, you're wrong. The Supreme Court justices disagree with you and they're the authority on it. If the Supreme Court tells me that I'm allowed to go to a casino with my family but not allowed to go to church, they're wrong. I don't care what their credentials are.
Right. Exactly right. So speaking of John Lewis and his funeral, after viewing the funeral on Thursday, every single business in Lycoming County should be full and open to their maximum capacity. Correct, Todd?
Just as a heads up, there's a meeting going on right now. It's in my office. Is the Speaker of the House, and we're meeting to see what else we can screw up this week. I just wanted everybody to know that. We're in my office having tea and coffee and crumpets on a Saturday morning.
So every single business should be open in Lycoming County.
Yeah, because they wore masks, but nobody social distanced.
And there were more than 50 people there.
And it was in a church.
Were
they singing? Were they talking? Yes, right?
Nobody.
Yeah. Yes,
right?
yes.
Nobody, Robert, nobody that went to that funeral ever had to worry about being outside the law, right? Nobody. It never even occurred to them. We're Democrats. We don't have to be, the laws aren't for us.
Wait, let me quote the governor. It's a cause I strongly believe in.
Right. That's how these people feel. Like, this is what they're telling you implicitly. Your mother died? You wanted to go to her funeral? Sorry, you have to sacrifice. Oh, someone we like died? Look, first off, let me say this about John Lewis, right? I don't begrudge at all his family and loved ones wanting to gather. I don't at all. I feel the exact same about every person who's lost anyone ever, especially in these past 3 months. And if you were told, well, wait a minute, there's questions about whether you could go properly mourn at a service. I feel for every family, Republican or Democrat. I feel for John Lewis's family. That does not justify a bunch of people that weren't related to John Lewis and were just his friend or his co-worker or someone who just liked what he did in the civil rights movement, attending a massive service, ignoring their own executive orders on social distancing. I'm sorry. And the argument that we hear over and over every time one of these politicians or someone with power violates the orders they enforce on us is, oh, well, it was important to me. This was important to me. You know, again, I don't know how when the mayor of Chicago, when she was asked by an actual decent journalist at a press conference, didn't you say you were going to arrest people that got their hair cut, but you went and got your hair cut? And she's like, yeah, hygiene's important to me. I don't know how there wasn't a riot right there. Like, are you kidding me? Like, hygiene's not important to everyone else? What they're telling you is when your parents die, when your family dies, your kids die, your husband or wife dies, it doesn't matter. Those people don't matter. You don't matter. Now, when they have a remote acquaintance that dies, you're damn right they're allowed to show up and mourn them as they see fit. It is ridiculous. And this is why none of us, and I'm sick and tired then of listening to my friends that are on the left going, oh, are you anti-science? You're not going to believe the mask stuff? You're not going to believe the social distancing stuff? No, because the people that are telling me you have to do this or millions will die are not listening to their own orders. And so if you were serious, if you were really afraid of COVID, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to Herman Cain. They couldn't wait to laugh and mock Herman Cain. Oh, he died because he went to a political rally. Do you think that if someone that went to this John Lewis funeral, a prominent Democrat, dies, and first off, I would never be so ghoulish as to mock them for dying. It's disgusting. But if I did, I know those people on the left would be like, how horrible of you. How dare you? There's no evidence that he died because he attended that. That's what they would say. And so I'm sick and tired. You're right. Every single business in this country, in this state, should open up immediately and say, your lives in Washington are not more important than me. And one of the things, I have to go back last week just to give a little prop to our guest. One of the things that Mastriano, state senator, correct, Mastriano said last week was, he is not there as a job. He's there as a service. That's what politics is. You're not there because you're guaranteed some job and you're better than other people. You're there because you're supposed to appreciate your contemporaries and your fellow Americans and be a voice for them. And it's evident that that's not what they think they are. They think they're a better species than you. They think that you should have to listen to anything they declare, even if it's not a law, if it's just their decree from on high, like a king. But they don't have to follow those same rules.
Yeah, you don't look like a servant. You don't look like a servant.
Right.
May I reclaim some time?
Yes.
Reclaim it.
We had to lay my grandmother to rest earlier this year. She didn't pass from COVID. Just the motor ran out, right? Of old age, right? So we gathered. If anybody wanted to social distance, they could social distance. If you had a health concern, we took that into account and took precautions. We virtually streamed the service. So those from far and wide that couldn't travel, that wanted to be there, could be there. We had an iPad that could be walked around the funeral home so visits could be had and, memories could be remembered, if you will, right? Yeah. And everybody was accommodated. And I got breaking news for everybody. Nobody got sick. Nobody. Were we fortunate? Did we just take the right precautions? Did we do right? I think we did it the right way.
But wait, Todd, maybe you have accesses to resources that those in Washington don't have. Maybe they just couldn't stream. Maybe they couldn't attend the funeral service digitally, right? That must be it, right? They didn't know about this.
No. It was white privilege.
Right. I forgot. And Ohio, what's incredible?
The Ohio strain of white privilege.
That's one of the most.
And do you know who we partnered with to make the virtual stream happen? A company in Canada that specializes in virtual funerals and accommodating families at their time of need. It was one of their first funerals that they did during COVID. And they said what had never happened before was a family member picking up an iPad and facing it toward the loved one, the decedent, and allowing those that weren't there to say something, to pray, to do whatever they wanted to do to remember the loved one.
Right. And
They
it
then
be recorded, right? And
Yes.
It be recorded, right?
Exactly. And remembered and memorialized. And that was something they took from that day forward into every presentation. And we gave permission to use it and said, if this helps other families in their grieving process, please feel free to use it.
And the point
before,
I'm making, just real quick, the point I'm making is, let's say you're Nancy Pelosi and you really do respect the memory of John Lewis. She couldn't have done something like that. She had to show up in person. Right. By the way, aren't we told how important all these leaders in Washington are? So now we're intentionally putting them all in the same room that supposedly the medical experts say, by all being in a church like this and singing and talking the praises of the deceased, that you could spread the virus. So we took all of these leaders of our country, put them all in one place and endangered them with this life-altering virus that's ravishing the world. That's what we have to believe? A virus so deadly, you can't go to your grandmother's funeral. You can't go to your place of work. You can't go to church. But it was okay for all the important leaders of our country to sit in and violate the medical advice and the executive orders that were laid out. And the reason is because it's a lie. Because it's about taking away your freedom to make you as miserable as possible, and then having their cohorts that control the narrative in the media and academia in Silicon Valley spread the message that all of the pain and suffering that you're going through is because of the Republicans, conservatives, Donald Trump, and even independent and left-wing people that don't agree with their crazy narrative. That's what this is about.
Well, I before we move on to Herman Cain, I need to tell you that if someone ever came and you eulogized me and used my eulogy to talk about politics the way that the President of the United States did at Lewis's funeral, I'm going to tell you that all the women in my life would at the same time attack the podium with knives and hack him to pieces and hold his head aloft as a trophy.
I believe it. I've met some.
I'm telling you right now, you guys are on your own if you do that. How does this man, how does the family of John Lewis, because they're alive, John isn't alive, how does the family of John Lewis allow this to happen to their family? It is the most despicable, reprehensible, and yes, I'm sorry, Tucker's right, sleazy example of honoring someone like a John Lewis who marched with Martin Luther King to have the last moments in being able to celebrate his life be this and have this man talk about the things that he talked about. And it's just trash.
Well, it's following a pattern, isn't it? You remember when a Black Lives Matter supporter shot 5 police officers in Dallas and Obama attended the funeral? Did Obama, sure, he said some kind words about the police. What did he take the time to say, though? Oh, and the police need to stop being racist. We need to improve racial. Can you imagine that? Imagine being the wife of an officer that was shot trying to protect peaceful protesters at a rally that hates you. A Black Lives Matter rally that was saying we hate the police, but you're a cop there protecting them, and then a radical member of their group kills you. And as the wife, you sit in that funeral and have to listen to the President of the United States lecture about how the institution your husband worked for needs to work to improve their race relations.
Right. You deserve to die because you were racist.
Right. And so it's no surprise then that Obama goes in and does this at John Lewis's funeral. Look, let me say this. I might take a different stance on this. I'm not shocked by that Obama did it. And if John Lewis's family's fine with it, which I don't know one way or another, that's fine. I don't care. The story to me is the hypocrisy that we constantly see from the people on the left who want to mince and parse every single word that Donald Trump says and say, this is non-presidential, it's non-presidential. And yet, when their savior, when their Saint Obama continues to act in the least presidential way possible over and over, and by least presidential, I don't mean the way he talks. You think that some of the founding fathers, that were elected, you don't think that they spoke in a pretty gruff manner? You got another thing coming. That's less important to me than the actions and the substance of what people are saying. So all of those that say, oh, the way Trump talks, it's horrible, it's not presidential. Meanwhile, we have a president in Obama that weaponized his intel agencies to spy on his opponent, Donald Trump, that politicizes funerals and things like that, even after he's out of office. I have no love for George Bush, right? You remember George Bush going to funerals and doing this? I don't. You remember George Bush taking every chance he had after Obama was elected to slam Obama? I don't remember that. Of course, that's because they're on the same side. They're both the establishment. But you see my point. It's that hypocrisy. The fact that the same people that will yell and scream if Trump tweets something out about a judge, they'll say, oh my goodness, this is authoritarian dictatorship. They have no problem then when their guy goes out and politicizes a funeral of a civil rights leader just to score some political points. Because to them, it's all about power. They don't care about hypocrisy. It's one set of rules for them, another for everyone else.
So your thoughts on that whole fiasco with Obama at John Lewis's funeral, Todd?
Well, Carlos, to your point, I think the family was in a situation where they had to allow.
You muted.
They were in a situation where they had to, for sure, allow President Obama, let alone former President Bush, speak because of circumstance. But I'm with you guys. Why are they in the room? Right. Do it virtually. If it is that grave of a risk. Or is it?
Right.
And I think it was a disservice. I really do believe it was a disservice to everything Lewis had worked for and built and done in the civil rights movement to have it tarnished the way it was this past week.
Listen, I have a rule. I don't speak better the dead. Okay, it's a good rule. I was never crazy about John Lewis. Okay, I put him in the same crowd of people that are in the left right now that are not doing anything with the Pelosi's and the AOC's. They're the same people. Okay, but that being said, when you make me feel bad for the guy, you've crossed the line. That was reprehensible. And yeah, you have the right to do that. Live and let live, absolutely. But let's face it, if you're a leader, okay, but you're telling me that this is the very best thing President Obama could have done. This is the very best thing he could have done.
Well, it goes back to this old chestnut, right? Donald Trump, the great divider. Oh, he's dividing us. How? Donald Trump is a reaction to Barack Obama. That's what he is. Right. Barack Obama.
All of this was caused by Barack Obama. All of it.
Right. And now there was a long line of establishment people that came before that are in the same vein as Obama. But what was different about Obama was he took all of this stuff that you saw as sort of a populist uprising during George Bush. For example, the anti-war movement. You saw that. And so what the establishment decided was, how do we shut these people up? I know. Let's put someone who's a Democrat, who's considered, a peaceful person. And, by the way, first black president. Let's put him up, and everything will be silenced, right? So now all of a sudden the anti-war movement's gone. The anti-war movement from the left has been so corrupted. Who's getting furious right now about Trump trying to pull troops from Afghanistan or from Germany? The same people that 10 years ago were protesting about wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are now saying, don't you dare bring those troops home. It's insanity. That's how effective that this brainwashing was that we saw from the establishment left. And you could see it with race relations and things like that. Who was it? Was it Trump that said, oh, these people in flyover country clinging to their guns and their Bibles? Was that him? Was it Trump that went to a funeral of someone who died in the line of duty and said, actually, I'd like to criticize that institution because it has problems with race? And we could see the result. All studies, all polling shows that people felt race relations were far better and increasing every year up until Obama was elected.
Right.
And then
the black president, the black man who became president in a completely systemically racist country.
Right.
By the way.
Right. And so what you saw is he divided people over and over and over again. And then what happens is there wasn't anyone on the right that was pushing back effectively. So Trump came out and did exactly what he should. I'm unabashedly defending the people that I love in this country. There's a lot of things I've said that I don't like that Trump's done, but that's the greatest thing he did. I love this country. I love the hardworking people in it, and I'm not going to leave someone bash them, particularly the President of the United States. And so, as always, and this is the theme that you see with the establishment left, they do something, and then when you respond to that something, they accuse you of being a bully, or they accuse you, in this case, of causing division. So just give you a simple example. They accused Donald Trump of trying to get dirt on Hillary Clinton from Russia. So what did they do? Got dirt on Donald Trump from Russia. They accused Trump, or they issued a quid pro quo to the Ukraine, And so what did they do? Charged and impeached Trump for issuing an alleged quid pro quo to the Ukraine. They accused Trump of dividing us when it was just him responding to the division that the Democrats caused. That's all the Democrat Party is. It's identity politics. It's cultural Marxism. Oh, white people are oppressors and black people are victims. Christian are oppressors and all other religions are victims. Men are oppressors and all women are victims. And on and on and on. That's what they do. Tom Wolfe said it. There are two Pennsylvanias, one for white people and one for black people. That's one of the most divisive statements you could make. But if we push back on that statement, or if Trump would specifically, they would say, oh, Trump's dividing us by pushing back against the narrative that we're divided. It's absolute insanity.
So take us back to 2012, Robert, and tell me your first thoughts that came to your mind as you remember that election and Herman Cain.
I thought, so, and I said this on my show here the other day, I'm not going to claim to be a Herman Cain expert. I thought he was intriguing. I thought he seemed like one of the smarter people in the race. I really did. I can't remember a lot of his specific policies, but as a character, and which is often what sticks with you, I thought that he seemed like one of the people that I thought were my favorite. Now, I was a Ron Paul guy, so that's who I was with the whole way. But the thing I remember most about Herman Cain was, one, he was a self-made entrepreneur, which is fantastic. And second, that he was brought down by one of the first prominent political Me Too allegations. He was brought down, and just like we've seen time and time again after, he was accused of a sexual assault with no evidence. And then as soon as he was out of the race, poof, it went away. We never heard from it again. And so brought a great man down. Now, people might be listening and saying, well, here's things Herman Cain did that I don't think Rob would like. Maybe that could be true. I don't know. I'm not claiming to be an expert in his life. But he seemed like a great man. He was brought down in one of the first attempts by the left and the Democrats to take down people that they're politically fearful of. And make no mistake about it, Herman Cain was someone they were politically fearful of. Why? Because they hate black conservatives more than about anyone. They claim that Black Lives Matter, but they hate any black person that doesn't go along with their narrative. And so he's a ripe target to take down. And, I mourn his passing. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And it's terrible what they did to him in 2012. And it's terrible how they're chortling about his death right now for political reasons.
Explain to me, because I'm just a regular guy that lives down West 4th Street, right? I'm just a regular guy. So explain to me the elite. There's two Pennsylvanias, the elite Pennsylvania, and there's us. So you translate. How does Herman Cain, a poor black man, get educated, start a business, and become a CEO of a very successful business? Godfather Pizza.
You there, Carlos?
Yeah.
He's deep in thought. Yeah, you're back. You were deep in thought there for a minute.
No, The connection was, my internet connection is unstable. How does a man become the chairman and CEO of Godfather Pizza, get an education, become the head of a Federal Reserve Bank in the United States of America, and run for president as a black man in a systemically racist country like the United States? How does that happen? Explain it to me.
Well, apparently everything fell his way miraculously for all those things to occur.
Oh.
Right? Because he didn't put any of the work in. He didn't put any of the time in to build, any of the things you just talked about, or be in a position to have the success and the acclaim that he had, and to unveil the 999 plan, which I would posit to our audience is very similar to what President Trump has done with the economy. Herman Cain was the front runner, if you will, on turning the economy around.
And let's not forget, Todd, Herman Cain actually at one point was the front runner to win that primary. We know that the United States is systemically racist, but even more than that, we know that all Republicans are racist, right? Isn't that weird that the front runner was a black man?
I was just going there, especially in the Republican Party. It's got to be a lie. There has to be a mistake.
Well, my question would be then for Jennifer Lake's husband, who's a registered Republican, did he back Herman Cain if racism has no home here? It's just a rhetorical question on a Saturday.
Well, but the larger point, though, is that I can't see a way of arriving here in honoring the memory of Herman Cain and not talk about the fact that he must have cheated to get here, right? And accomplished all those things.
That's got to be the way he got there, right? That's why they had to bring him down. He had to have done something wrong. My goodness, how dare you even think you're going to run for president? How dare you? It's ridiculous on its face. And he did this, by the way. He was mentoring younger entrepreneurs and bringing them along with all the success that he had, right? The right way.
Right.
The absolute right way.
Right. He was doing things that Gary Vaynerchuk is now being applauded for doing today, years ago. And, and that's what caring looks like.
Dude,
see,
and
that's what America looks like, is America cares. They do care. And to our chagrin, especially Robert's, okay, why is it that, and especially like we did a couple of weeks ago when I condemned Steve Keener, the chairman of Little League International, why is it to Carlos Saldivia to defend Little League for Steve Keener against Marxists? Why do I have to be the one to sit there and defend it? Why? I mean, it's an epidemic, and why can't Little League do and all these other people, Amazons, and my gosh, sometime this week, did I hear correctly that Amazon gave $100 million to one of these Marxist groups this week, or it was found out that they gave like over 100 million? It was a huge, ridiculous number. But why is it that Trader Joe's and what's the name of that energy drink?
Red Bull.
I don't drink Red Bull.
Yeah.
Why is it that they can stand on their own 2 feet and no one else can?
Because may I reclaim my time for just a moment?
Of course. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Why? Here's my question. Then Robert, take it from here. Why is it that when Little League International changed their logo and stood shoulder to shoulder with Black Lives Matter, there was exactly one story done?
Yep.
And it was in the Patriot News. You can't find that on their website other than the logo. You can't find the story. You can't find any of the advocacy for it. Why is that?
Because he didn't go to AP. He didn't go to New York Times. He didn't go to the Washington Post. He released the information to a news outlet that he trusted, and the news outlet
that would carry
was small
the water
enough.
For him.
But more importantly, and you'll understand this from a media point of view, it wasn't going to create a furor nationally because it was a local media company. So this local media company is almost, I would say, hyper local. And why didn't you release it at AP in New York Times or the Washington Post? Because it would have been a big story. It would have been a big story, and a lot of people would have condemned him. So don't think for a second this wasn't strategically planned.
So are you saying that John Boje's not as big as he thinks he is?
I did not
with a
say
story
that.
of that magnitude? That's a magnitude story, Carlos, that they gave him.
Yeah, but let's not make believe that he's not an establishment person, that he's not with the elites, okay? Because he is. He's on their boards. Nowhere. He's on their boards, and he meets with them privately, and they consult on stories, and this was all tailored. This wasn't journalism.
It was a press release.
It was another in a long series of lies. That's what it is. But moreover, Herman Cain is a man that earned every single thing that he accomplished. He earned it. He followed the rules. He worked hard. He ignored people when they told him that you couldn't do it. See, part of the problem today is that you're talking to people and they really don't even care. So I could be spitting in the wind, but they don't care to work hard. They're not going to work hard. This to them is what I would call sport, literally, right? Having all these riots and all this anarchy. This is sport. This is Saturday night bowling. This is Sunday afternoon D&D. This is Monday night football with your friends at the bar. Rioting and causing mayhem and tearing down statues and putting stuff on murals, on walls, and on streets, and pulling people out of cars and beating them up, regardless of their color, is sport. It's not ideology.
That's a big part. That's absolutely. And with Herman Cain specifically, like I did the other day, I believe it was the National Museum of Black History. I could be wrong about this, but it's something to that effect. And they released a document that said, what is whiteness?
It was about 2.5 weeks ago. Yeah.
Right. What is whiteness? And some of the things that it said on there is hard work, personal responsibility. Herman Cain represented the biggest type of threat to these cultural Marxists. And that is someone who belongs to their victimhood groups and completely rejects their ideology. Look, they're going to hate someone like me. They're going to hate someone like Todd. Carlos, they're going to hate you even more because you're someone who's an immigrant. Oh my goodness, you're an immigrant and you don't toe the party line? See, with me and Todd, that's just like, white guys, whatever, they're racist, they're all horrible, blah, blah, blah. But someone like you, don't you understand, Carlos? You have all of these victimhood points you could claim. Don't you understand? Why are you rejecting that? Why are you advocating?
And you've had the police called to your house, man. Come on.
Yeah, right. And so think about all of the great victimhood. The same is true of Herman Cain. Herman Cain represented hard work, personal responsibility, not claiming victimhood. He was black and said, I don't want to be looked at as a black man. I want to be looked at as an entrepreneur. And then the biggest sin, and this is what you and Todd had already mentioned, he was teaching young black people how to be successful entrepreneurs. Well, they can't have that. All of a sudden, if you teach the black community, you don't have to be reliant on government. Actually, this country does afford you opportunities. And if you're hardworking and you get out of this cycle of gang violence and, belittling education, if you break out of that, you could achieve just as much as, if not more, than the people you see out there that are of other races. And Herman Cain represented that. So that's why. I mean, just think of the ghoulish nature of the things we've seen from blue checkmark Democrat people. Not just random, you expect, look, random trolls on the left and right. They're going to say terrible things on social media. But people that actually have institutional power. Oh, Herman Cain had it coming. That's what he gets for not wearing a mask. That's what he gets for going to a Trump rally. Oh. Like, how disgusting can you be? It is unbelievable. And the reason, when you understand, it's not that they're flippantly saying this. They hated the man. They hate anyone that stands in the way of them getting power. And the group that stands in the way of them getting power more than anyone else are ones that belong to these oppressed groups. Whether you're gay, whether you're black, whether you're Latino, you're an immigrant, you're not a Christian. Right. If you're one of those groups and say, and I reject this cultural Marxism, they hate you more than anything.
Right. People like Soul and McWhorter and stuff like that. Yeah. So did you guys notice that Rutgers solved racism this week? They solved racism by changing capitalization rules and doing away with grammar requirements in the English department. Did you see that story, Todd?
Yeah, that now grammar is going to be the savior. That we're changing
racist.
Grammar.
Right, it's racist.
Yeah.
And capitalizing black and decapitalizing white is going to certainly make things better. How does that happen, Robert? How does that make it better?
Well, how does it happen?
Tell me what they think it is.
Right. So how does it happen? It's because we haven't done anything for 30 years in academia.
No. How does that actually happen to solve racism?
Oh, well,
capitalizing black letter, black.
Right. It doesn't any more than tearing down statues of Lincoln does. It's all red herrings. This is all. It will never end. People do understand it. Last night in Portland, they had the nice folks of Black Lives Matter and Antifa had a nice bonfire. Decided to burn a book. Did you see what book they decided to burn? I saw
that after our meeting. I saw that.
Yeah.
They were burning the Bible.
Right.
What does that remind you of?
It reminds me of every authoritarian dictator that we've seen throughout history. It reminds me of Pol Pot in Cambodia. It reminds me of Stalin. That's what it reminds me of, and that's exactly what it is. This doesn't end. Until we fight back, it does. They will, when you, and who was it? Heineck was the man's name. I saw a quote this morning. When you have people burning books, burning humans is inevitable. It will end, and it's accelerating, right? If I would have told you 6 months ago that there would have been a mainstream political party that said it was perfectly acceptable to burn down police precincts, you would have laughed in my face. We're there.
Oh, yeah.
If I would have told you that the AP and Reuters would say, we're going to capitalize black when we mention black people, but make sure we have lowercase white because white people aren't really a race and we need to really respect the history of black people, you would have said that's nonsense. Why would a respected news outlet like that do something like that? Here we are. If I would have told you that somewhere like Rutgers would be changing the rules of grammar in the English department and to a lot... because somehow that was going to solve racism, you would have said that's a joke. It's coming, and it's getting faster and faster and faster. And it's already resulting in people getting killed. It's going to result in mass death. They are setting it up. And look, we have only ourselves to blame. Remember Project Veritas? Largely maligned by the left. How dare they do ambush journalism? Remember when they were talking to those Bernie supporters? And what did they say? One of the reasons that Bernie wants to give out all this money to education is because we want to have re-education camps for Trump supporters. It's coming. It's coming to a state near you. They're going to re-educate you, and they're going to kill you if you refuse to accept it. And I know this sounds hyperbolic. I'm not saying it's going to be tomorrow. I'm not going to say it's going to be next month. But once these people are willing to engage in the violence they have and have the cover from the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, nothing will stop them. It's grammar today, it's speech today, it's the police and the right to defend yourself tomorrow, and the day after that, it's your life. They will never accept you unless you totally bow to them and pray to them for forgiveness. That's why they're burning your Bible last night. No God before them. And I've said this on this channel and elsewhere for months. What this is about is replacing all systems of power and personal responsibility and worship and higher ideals with them. You may only exist to pay fealty to the establishment left. That's it. And it's going to get way, way worse because we don't have anyone with any nerve in the Republican Party except a handful of people that are willing to stand up against this because they call themselves Black Lives Matter. So obviously they could burn the Bible. If you disagree with burning the Bible, you don't like Black lives. It's that simple. Ask Sean King. He's calling for the vandalization of churches if they have white depictions of Jesus. You starting to see? You out there, my Democrat friends that go to church on Sunday? You starting to see you're going to be put in the education camps just like everyone else. They're going to come for you like everyone.
No question about it. And this is why Roberts is doing the things that he's doing, and why these politicians do the things that they're doing. So I'm going to bring up an idea, and it's probably the most seditious idea that I've brought up. Okay. When I was a young conservative, there was one issue that stuck with me and stuck in my craw, that I was not happy with the way that we responded as conservatives to this issue. And that issue is medical bankruptcy. As a young conservative, it was not good. It was not good through no fault of their own. Again, through no fault of their own is a slogan that we use today to depict what happened with the virus. But, I understand that there's going to be naysayers and people are going to be at me because, if you smoke and, you deserve to get cancer and you deserve to die, and you deserve not to be, in the hospital, and you deserve to be bankrupt. Okay. But by and large, okay, that's lunacy. And when you get sick and you lose everything you had because of medical bankruptcy, it's something that I think should have been dealt with. There was one man that took that idea and turned it into a movement 30 years later. That man's name was Bernie Sanders. So my question to you is, if your girlfriend is trying to get your attention to do something or over something in your relationship and she burns your house down, do you go, hey, yeah, I should probably pay better attention? Or do you just think she's psychotic? Okay, so hold that thought. Do you think that maybe you should have paid better attention to the problem? She burnt the house down. Or is she just crazy? So here's the idea, and please follow me. Does the same go to Antifa and others that are creating violence in the name of dialogue?
No, not at
Tell me
all.
what.
I refuse to accept. I'm not going to.
You understand the question, though, right?
I do.
You understand.
And I do.
And I didn't tailor it. I didn't tailor it to be cute. I tailored it because the ballast is medical bankruptcy, which we ignored for 30 years, and someone took it and for 30 years developed a whole movement around it.
No,
it's not a getcha thing. I'm not trying to.
Right. If your girlfriend punches you in the face over and over and says, listen to me, you don't say, oh, okay, now it's a reasonable argument. No. Period. End of discussion. Should we be talking about medical care? Sure. Would Bernie Sanders and his supporters' policy make medical care worse for almost every American? Yes, absolutely. Okay. It's the same with Black Lives Matter. Yes, it's a shame that the Republicans haven't dealt with real problems that we see in the inner city. I believe most of those problems have been exacerbated by left-wing politics, such as the war on poverty. We see now that one of the major things that determine whether or not someone has a successful life is whether they grow up in a two-parent household. Patrick Moynihan in the early 60s, a Democrat, commissioned a study that said it was a national disgrace that 25% of black children were born out of wedlock. So they instituted the war on poverty, and now the number's 75%. So we've tripled the problem. Right? Now, does that mean because Black Lives Matter's out there tearing down statues and beating people and shooting people that I have to say, oh, well, yes, they have a valid point that maybe we should listen to? No, because and here's why. It's not that maybe the problem they're talking about doesn't exist. It's if we are willing to set the precedent. Hey, if you want your issue to be dealt with, all you need to do is shoot some people and burn down some cities. Then we'll talk about it. If we set that precedent, it's worse than any of the individual problems that they're articulating. So that's why.
But the basis of all of this is the fact that Republicans did nothing yet again.
Yeah. What I mean, look at Trump. Remember, like, first off, let's go back.
So my question to you is, based on that idea that we both agree on it, okay? And I know through gritted teeth, okay, you You understand what I'm saying to you. It's not like I don't disagree with you.
Right.
Okay. But where I'm going is Republicans didn't do anything for 40 years in our lifetime regarding medical bankruptcy. And we should have, right? If not us, who? Based on that idea, use that idea as the base. What are Republicans offering in 2020?
The nothing. The Republicans are offering we're not the Democrats, and the Democrats are worse than us. That's it.
So talk a little bit about that idea, because I like that idea.
Right. So normally what you see is the party that's out of power. Sometimes they could get away with, and this is kind of a newer phenomenon, but sometimes they can get away with the idea that, you know, like, we're not Obama, vote for us. Wasn't that the Republican message in 2012?
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
and sometimes it works. But it's very rare that the party in power runs on the message of, oh, we're not the other party. Right. It's very rare. And, you know, I don't blame Trump. There's certainly blame to go with Trump with some of this. But, I mean, look at the things Trump's tried to do. Trump doesn't have the traditional political acumen, which is a good thing, because the traditional political people have been wrong over and over again. So it's good that Trump doesn't have that. So remember, like, going into the 2018 election, I remember specifically this happened. Trump came out and was like, yeah, I want to talk about Medicare. I want to talk about health care. Let's talk about that. And McConnell came out and said, no, Mr. President, that's not a winner for us. Let's talk about that after the election. How'd that work out? Right? And so Trump, he just bumbles into stuff. He's like, yeah, there's a problem. Let's talk about how to solve it. You might not like his answer, which is fine. We could have those debates. But I don't think he's one to shy away from a problem. He'll say, there's a problem. Let's try to address it. But there's so many people politically on both sides that are like, no. Our job as politicians isn't to solve problems. Our job is to maintain power and to make sure that those problems keep going so that we could use them as an excuse to, oh, we're going to fix it next year and maintain that power. And certainly the Republicans are guilty of that, as are the Democrats. But, I mean, I don't know, like, what did we want? The argument, we see things like Medicare, Medicaid, they're a disaster. They're bankrupt. You know, it's easy to say, well, the Republicans should have did something. I agree. There's all sorts of things that could be done. But every time we suggest it, then the next logical step is we need to just spend $3 trillion. Let's do that. Let's do this. And it's a disaster. We can see it now with kind of the two competing bills, the Republican and Democrat bill. Are we going to spend $1.1 trillion or are we going to spend $3 trillion to help people out with COVID and with, you know, the economic fallout of it? So, you know, as much as I agree with you that, yes, the Republicans have been worthless. Look, I'll put it quite simply. You know how as conservatives, we look at the inner city community? We make this argument all the time. Why, if you're in the inner city, why would you keep voting for Democrat? They've controlled your city probably 60, 70, 80 years. Mm-hmm. The Democrats claim to support you, and then as soon as you vote for them, they don't do anything to help your community. Why would you keep voting for them? Well, can't that question be turned to us? Why are we still voting Republican? What have they done for us? Can you name one thing other than, well, they're not the Democrats and the Democrats want to destroy the country? I guess. So we have our choice between people that actively want to destroy the country or people that are too cowardly to prevent them. That's the choices we have.
Todd, so what do Republicans offer for you?
You know,
Small government?
The only guy for me right now that is fighting the good fight, and I'm being honest about this, for us locally is Fred Keller. I watched Jim Jordan take apart Dr. Fauci the other day. There are so few and far between folks that want to stand up to what's going on right now. It's pitiful. But to PA12's credit, you've got a fighter in Fred Keller. And I think that to tie this back to Herman Cain, because Fred worked his whole life to get where he is, right, as a United States congressperson, I think that bodes well for PA12 because he knows what it means to work for a living. He gets it. But generally, the whole idea of, well, we're not them, that's not a winner.
My problem with Fred Keller is his voice isn't unique enough to elevate him to star status. And what I mean by that is that, power, people like Crenshaw and Getz and Nunes and Jordan, they're media stars. Fred's not a media star. So his voice isn't unique enough, or at least he hasn't found it yet, to drive media. I mean, listen, I can make a really good case that Robert Noah right now is more known amongst political people on the left or right than Fred Keller is. I can make a good argument right now. That is the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube for the last 2 years. Fred's not doing that. That will come back and bite him in the ass. No question about it. I mean, we're not going to have an argument about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And let me just say, for those that don't know, I ran against.
But the communication is my problem, Rob.
Right, I agree.
And Todd, the communication and the effectiveness of his role as a voice and as a media star as a U.S. rep, because that's what you got to be now. If you're not AOC, if you don't have the media star power that AOC has, go home. You're done. No one's listening to you.
Right, and let me say, for those that don't know, I ran against Fred in the District 12 special election. So just so you know, when I'm discussing him, I don't personally know him very well just from meeting him through there. Here's the thing, like, you can't be who you're not. And we need fighters of all stripes.
I get it.
And so, like, I don't want Fred Keller to be me, because it would be disingenuous. And Fred's he's not as bombastic as me. So I at least appreciate that. I do think from looking, I can honestly say, when I look at District 12 and District 15 where I'm at, he's doing a far better job than who we have in District 15. And at least he's willing to stand up and say these things. But yes, I agree with you. Maybe it's the lack of experience, because let's keep in mind, he's not even going to serve a full term, right? Because
right. No, I get it. Like I said, he's getting his sea legs.
Yeah.
And I would give him an incomplete. Okay, but let's face it, he's not a media star. And it's not someone that's going to get the media that Getz and Jordan and all these and Crenshaw gets. It's not the same thing. I'm sorry, it's just not. I mean, it's cool that he gets to fly with the president in Air Force One, but beyond that, how is that of value to us?
He needs.
Would you agree he's out there more than many similar sized district representatives are? I think he's a lot more visible than. I can tell you this: the folks that represent Stark County, Ohio, I never see them on television ever.
Mm. Same with my rep, So I mean, yeah. Look, he's not perfect. I'll say this: I think District 12. I think that I would have been the best candidate to win, and I thought there were a couple that were really good. I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought Fred at least he had the nerve to stand up and say what's right, even if he didn't do it in the style or with as voraciousness as I would have liked. At least, and that could be taught, or he could get someone, on his media team that does a better job. Look, Carlos, you were there during that election. For those, so people know, what had happened was the representative from that area had an illness, and so he won the election and then immediately said, I can't serve because of this illness, and so there was a special election. When I was running in that special election, one of the things I said that I didn't hear many of the other candidates say, and Todd, Carlos, you could back me up in here, was there going to be one vote that the representative would have swung that won from that district? Like one actual vote on a policy or something in the House? No. The Democrats control the House. There's not going to be any bill that comes up that you're going to have Democrats not completely agree with each other. Maybe one or two stragglers, but that's it. So his vote was irrelevant. And I said, what you need is someone to set the groundwork for the culture war. You need someone that could go out there to every media outlet, both favorable and disfavorable to you, and bring the case of conservatism to the American people and how disastrous the Democratic Party is. So at least Fred stuck up for it, and he has pointed that out. I think he could do a better job of putting that to the American people. But yeah, compared to what else we see in the Republican Party, I would say he's one of the stronger ones that I see in Pennsylvania, but still a lot of work to be done.
No, that's like I said, it's not a shot. I think right now it's an incomplete. Okay. So let's see what happens.
Right.
Todd, is calling white people racist their kryptonite?
Why? Rob's laughing. Can you restate that question, please?
Is calling white people racist their kryptonite?
Define there.
White people. See, you're right.
Who's the they?
Call me racist.
No, but who's the they?
All white people. So if someone calls you and Robert racist, is that your kryptonite?
Not mine.
See, because I think it is.
Wait. If Rob called me racist, is that my kryptonite?
Yeah.
Have you been listening to this show at all? Rob just took a drink. I thought he was going to spit it across the room. It ain't my kryptonite, bro.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Take yourselves out of it. Obviously, I'm not talking about us, but it is, right?
In general.
That's why they can't respond. That's why they can't respond. That's why they do nothing. That's why they're scared, because being called a racist is their kryptonite.
Listen.
They don't know how to defend themselves. They don't know how to put forward conservative values to be able to fight against it.
Do you want to ask Jennifer Lake what it looks like when you call somebody systemically racist and the tables get turned?
She's an incompetent. She is not worthy of it. She's not a good example. A good example is a farmer who's been working for 50 years to produce food for people in central Pennsylvania, and him not being able to respond because he can't even believe that the question is being, leveled at him. So it is, right? It is their kryptonite.
In general, and not, you could obviously find specific.
I would agree.
Right. In general, I agree. And look, it's real simple why. Most people of any race, here's the truth that the Democrats and the establishment doesn't want you to know. Most people, regardless of their race, we all share way more than we don't share, right? It's just the truth. We're all humans. That's the most important thing. Most humans, if you tell them, hey, you did something to hurt my feelings, if it's in good faith, would be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to do that. And similarly, if they would say, hey, ancestrally, kind of the people that you came from did some really bad things, most people, regardless of their skin color, would be like, oh, really? Yeah, that's terrible. I feel bad about that, right? The problem is the institutions realize by focusing that just at one group. So we just tell the story. It's just white people. It's their history that's evil. That's the group. 1619 Project, right? It's all white people. No other group will we look at their historical oppressions. It's just white people. And so the average white person just is like, yeah, that sucks. Slavery was horrendous. I agree. I feel terrible about that. And then the next step is, oh, well, do you understand that you have some sort of personal responsibility for that? Well, they feel bad. So a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, what can I do? And if it seems like a reasonable demand, they're willing to meet it. And so they're like, sure, I'll hear you out. The same would be true of the black community, of the Hispanic community, of the Asian community, etc. It's just that because the institutions of power aren't focused on their sins of the past, and for 30, 40 years, they've only been focused on Western culture, white people, Eurocentric cultures, that now we have 30, 40 years. We have multi-generationally now guilt of, oh my goodness, what my people did was horrible. What my people did was horrible. So I believe a lot of it, you're right that it is kryptonite. I think it's in good faith, though. It's because people want to be good people, the average person. And so they take this stuff seriously when they're told the way you were born came with privilege. Your ancestors were uniquely horrible people and you deserve to pay reparations, or you have to have some retribution for what your ancestors did. People take that stuff seriously, and they should not. Because if you look at the history of humanity, regardless of your ethnicity, your religion, your geographical location of your ancestors, every one of them were oppressors and oppressed at the same time. And you should never be responsible for the sins of your fathers, period. The more we focus on it, the more we're getting to Cambodia. We're getting to the point where we say, or Zimbabwe, or South Africa, where we say because of the sins of the past, we are justified in engaging in the exact same amount of sins against you in the present. And it's horrific.
So if liberals and progressives, it feels like liberals and progressives don't want a post-racial society, right? They say that they want it, but they really don't, because if they did, they wouldn't be the gerrymandering and it wouldn't be the racial preferences based on race. You know, if you got a test score and you're black and it's lower than somebody else's, that's their kryptonite.
By the way, Todd,
because that is racism.
Real quick, you want to see where this leads? Did you see? I saw this. Scott Adams tweeted this out, and it's a political ad from a Hispanic group. And did you see this? Where it's
I saw it.
It's saying that there are more Hispanics in this country than blacks, and Hispanics contribute more to the economy, yet Joe Biden has vowed to pick a black vice president. Why not a Hispanic vice president? Do you see where identity politics leads?
It wasn't. It was a commercial by a Latino organization, and if tell me, I'm going to go and search it, but I'm going to ask you this question, and you guys could discuss while I search it. Is education over?
The way, Todd, you can take it, but I'm sure we agree. The way we know it, it is.
The current form of education at every level is now a thing of the past. There are any number of school districts, any number of colleges and universities, and we're seeing it at the athletics department at Penn State, where they're doing either pay freezes or pay cuts, right? You're now starting to see reductions in force. The conversations are now who's going to be the in the classroom teacher and who's going to be the virtual teacher. And we're going to have teams that are teaching in the classroom, and we're going to have teams that are teaching online only. So to Carlos's question, yes, definitively, education as we know it in its current form is over.
And like we talked about this last night in our meeting. Look, here's the thing. If you're out there listening and you're a teacher, you need to rein in the leadership of your teachers union, because you're talking yourself out of a job. Because here's what's going to happen. I saw many professors here locally at Clarion University that praised the lockdowns because they'd get to stay at home and they didn't have to go into work and blah, blah, blah. Now they're laying off 60 professors, and they're also furloughing many others, and a lot of adjunct professors just won't be brought back. We're seeing that at state schools all over Pennsylvania. This is what's going to happen to teachers that listen to the teachers union say, no, we don't want to go back to work. Because just real quick, inevitably what happens is the average person realizes, hey, we don't need these teachers for education. Just give us the tax money that you would have spent on my child for education, and I'll take care of their education myself. So teachers, your union leadership is talking you out of a job, and you're soon to find yourself unemployed, just like so many professors.
So this is not going to play very well to the radio audience, okay? But to the video audience, this is a tweet by Scott Adams that says, and I don't personally agree with it, but I get what he says. You might want to adjust your presidential bets after seeing this. I think it's over. Now, I don't think it's over, but this is an ad by a Latino organization called Un Nuevo Dia, a new day. And it's subtitled, so I'm going to play it. It's 30 seconds long, but if you're watching us on our show through the Zoom link, you want to, or if you're listening to our show through Rob's YouTube audio, when we post this week the Zoom link, you should watch this. And it's called Un Nuevo Dia, and it's subtitled. So here it is.
And so basically, I don't know if people could hear the audio because I couldn't, but basically it just says, it's referencing Hispanics. It said, we built this country, we contribute so much to this country, yet despite that, Joe Biden, it's not good enough for Joe Biden. He's vowed to elect or to choose a black vice presidential candidate instead of a Hispanic candidate. And the implications
So,
go ahead.
right. So it's pretty damning because it says that we are 1/6 of the entire population. We have double the economic output that the black population puts out, and you're not picking a Latino vice president. Why isn't that good enough for Joe Biden?
Not only picking, not even considering.
Not even considering. And these don't have to be Republican Latinos, because if you saw who they used and referenced in the video, mostly were Hispanic Latinos that were Democrats. AOC, the guy that ran for president from
Menendez.
No, Menendez is, they used the Menendez, but he's a senator from New Jersey. Castro,
yeah.
right. And it's listen, if this came from, and we could easily find out if Un Nuevo Dia is an organization that's a left-leaning organization. If it is, it's pretty damning, which is what then makes sense by Scott Adams saying that this is bad, right?
Listen, let's have an uncomfortable conversation. This is what happens when you play identity politics, right?
Right.
The argument, like, let's just be honest. By 2060, 2070, I don't know the exact projected date, but Hispanics will outnumber whites in this country, which I could care less. I don't care. At that point, how do you sell the Hispanic community if you're the establishment Democratic Party? You're responsible for the sins of slavery. How do you sell that to them? What's that pitch going to look like? And we hear all this conversation about racial tensions between whites and blacks. You think that doesn't exist between Hispanics and blacks? When you start playing the identity politics game, you open all of these wounds. This is what intersectionality is about. They have this thing in academia. Here's the problem. Like when I used to judge and be in debate, here's a debate round you would hear. One extreme leftist team stands up and says, this country is racist. Every evil in the world is because of racism. The other team stands up and says, no, this country is sexist. Every evil in this country is because of sexism. How do you decide that debate? And what they realized was, wait a minute, if we're going to divide people up in all these groups will start fighting with each other. So how do we keep a cohesive movement when we're all about division? Well, you have the oppressor, the ultimate oppressor, white, male, Christian, wealthy, native to this country, etc. Donald Trump, basically. Donald Trump is the avatar of their hatred. So it's easy to keep that coalition together. That will not always be the case. And you can already see the lines fracturing. And by the way, is it racist to decide that you're going to pick someone for your vice president based on skin color? I say it is. I say if your criteria for picking someone for a job is the first and most important criteria is they have to meet this racial criteria, that's racism. If someone did this with a white person, well, I need a white vice presidential candidate, it would be blood in the streets. People would be talking about how racist they were. So yeah, it's not a comfortable conversation to have, but I'm just telling you, if you're in a minority population, understand that this narrative that's being pushed that the entire country is just about white people being abusive to minorities is a lie. And the more you go down that road, you're going to start to open up wounds that's causing division, not just between these groups and white people, but between these groups and each other.
What's the difference between the president withholding money for schools that don't open and Obama withholding monies from schools that won't build trans bathrooms?
Go ahead, Todd.
I'll let you take that first.
So there's a bit of a difference. When you're saying that you're not going to open for no good reason, or because the teachers union says, well, we're not going to do that because we don't feel safe, it's a lot different than a political plank position in the previous administration. Rob?
Yeah, I mean, here, to Carlos's point, it's very similar in the idea of both are deciding to withhold funding to groups that they disagree with. schools that they disagree with. The reason it's more acceptable for Trump to do it is Trump is saying because you're not performing the job that this money was sent to you in the first place for. With the trans bathroom issue, it was Obama saying because you're not agreeing to my political ideology. Right? That's different. So the exact apples to apples comparison would be if Trump said, I'm no longer going to give money to people, to schools that have criticized me, or I'm not going to give money to schools that talk about pro-choice issues. I'm not going to do that. That would be an apples for apples because that would say, here's a political issue. I will use my power as presidency and my control of the purse strings to say schools that don't agree with me politically no longer receive money. So by any stretch, what Obama did was worlds worse than what Trump is suggesting doing. And by the way, I'm 100% on board with what Trump's doing. Why am I paying just look, if there's one thing that you get from the show today, it's this. What is the agreement you have with your government? You pay money in the form of taxes. You give up some of your freedoms in the form of being a law abider and saying there's certain things I can't do because we've collectively agreed. What are you getting in return? When the government refuses to defend you through their police force, you're not getting a good deal for your money.
Which is the primary thing that they should
That's
be
right.
doing.
And when the government is saying, no, we're not going to provide an education for your schools at the same level that we used to, then why are you paying for that? And so you should get your money back. Every single one of us should be petitioning, if there's no school, I want my property tax money back. Period. At every state level, it's that simple. You wouldn't pay for a service that you're not getting anything from in return. And that's exactly what we're getting out of our education system. In fact, worse than that, here's what's so stupid about the left and them cheering for schools to be shut down. Don't you understand the reason that you have so much political power right now and cultural power is because you've controlled the schools? You idiots. If you're setting up making it easier to disband these schools, all you're doing is setting away or giving away your biggest indoctrination chamber. So I'm all for it. Stay shut down, teachers.
Me too.
All for it, man. Give that money to, let's go to charter schools. Let's go to independent private schools. Let's go to parents using, online resources to teach their children. There are going to be problems with that, no doubt. It'll be a struggle to transition, but that's better than the alternative, bowing down to these teachers unions and indoctrinating our kids from Head Start on about how this country's evil and indoctrinating them to these Marxist globalist ideals.
Todd, should we postpone the election?
No, we're not postponing the election,
Are
Carlos.
you sure?
Yes, we're not postponing the election.
Are you thinking about putting out any tweets? Just wondering if we should postpone the election?
No, we're not. Listen,
No.
I really wish, because we're supposed to all read between the lines on the left. I really wish when, the president uses the Twitter machine that he would be more clear. All he was saying is he doesn't want to have a mail-in, made-for-fraud election in November. He wanted the ability for everybody to go, pull the lever, punch the Chad on the ballot, put it in a machine so that their vote is counted. And then you hear all of the nonsense on the other side going, well, there's voter suppression going on. Yeah, it's coming from that side. I read a story earlier this week where Pennsylvania is willing to pay for the postage on ballots, and that's not going to be an issue. I mean, it's ridiculous on its face.
My favorite part of all of this is the fact that after 4 years of him tweeting, he still makes them chase the laser pointer that he points to the wall.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, and it was all over my phone 16 times that day from any number of media outlets going, oh, he's changing the election. Everybody knows what he said. And look, everybody knows what he meant.
And
do you want to postpone the election, Rob?
No, not at all.
No?
But it's brilliant that Trump said this, and here's why.
Oh, no question about it.
Hey, I got a question for you. Instead of postponing it, how about we move it up?
Yeah.
Want to go tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do it tomorrow.
Real quick, just want to say real quick. Remember, what they're saying is the Democrats say all of your Bill of Rights, because they say this is authoritarianism. for Trump to suggest this. Yet, when they demand through their governors and executive orders that you not be allowed to go to work, you not be allowed to go to a restaurant, you not be allowed to go to church, you not be allowed to go to a loved one's wedding or funeral, what they're implicitly saying is, hey, you have to sacrifice those rights. It's important. But when it comes to the election, isn't it true if I show up to the ballot box that I'm as likely to spread coronavirus as if I go to work or if I go to a wedding or go to a funeral? Wouldn't that be true? Oh, wait, no, I forgot. The experts say only when political things that they don't like are occurring will the virus spread. It can't spread when it's left-wing things. So what they're really telling you is, hey, you give up your rights because you have to sacrifice. But the very time that it could possibly impede us getting political power, my God, it would be authoritarianism to suggest that we not be allowed to do that. So screw your family, screw your job. None of that matters. But if you stand in the way of us possibly winning an election, oh my goodness, you're the next Hitler. You're an authoritarian. So no, I don't want to see Trump delay the election, but it once more points out their hypocrisy, which they'll get away with because they control the narrative.
So before we go to final comments, we're going to the Barstool Sports part of the show where Todd Bartlett is going to give us the hijinks and the Keystone Copness of unforced errors in the state and the county and the city of Williamsport. Give us a recap of all the hijinks from this week, Todd.
So this might take just a second.
Just a second.
And we may go past 1 o'clock. It's okay.
We may go past 1 o'clock.
It's our show.
If I can screen share, you know what? I'm not even going to bother screen sharing it. I'm just going to go this way. If you don't already have headphones on, put them on, and we'll unmute this. And let's see if we can actually hear Secretary Levine on Tuesday of this week.
I can't.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, so I tried to share the screen, and apparently it didn't work with the audio that's coming through. Long story short, here's what happened. I asked Secretary Levine on Tuesday the following question. If you told the Toronto Blue Jays they couldn't come to Pittsburgh because Toronto has 15,000 cases, why would you ever let the Miami Marlins into Philadelphia when Miami-Dade County has more cases in Miami-Dade County than the state of Pennsylvania? And it was, well, the Phillies are our team and the Pirates are our team, and that's why they need to be left to play in the association. It was one of the most damnable answers.
The association?
Oh, yeah. Didn't even identify Major League Baseball.
She referred to Major League Baseball as the association?
She was so flummoxed with my question that it was the association. We're working with the association. No, that's the
Is that the Borg? Is that the Borg name? You know, BORG, Star Trek name for Major League Baseball today? The association?
Yeah, it's the association. And I said, well, if you're basing it on data and science, but her reaction wasn't as priceless as the rest of the journalists in the room who all snapped their heads around at me, looking at me like I had three heads going, what are you guys looking at me for?
Because you dared to bring up an example that was so grievous, so obvious that a child should have said, keep the Marlins in Florida, that the secretary of health in the state threw the county and the city of Philadelphia under the bus to protect herself. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. Okay. Now, you want the other little hijinks of the week?
Unbelievable.
Okay. Here in the city of Williamsport, we have a major announcement. Right after our show last weekend, the mayor and his lovely bride announced they're expecting their third child in January of 21. You do the math. This is the same mayor who refused a debate invitation while being a candidate for mayor last year. It's also a mayoral candidate who I endorsed before anybody. Okay, and I've now rescinded that endorsement. I'm working on a story titled Getting Slaughtered. That will probably come out here in the next 2 weeks or so. And the reason that story is being written, his name is Slaughter, by the way. The reason that story's being written is he's refused multiple requests to provide whether the city is issuing permits for protests or not. And there's a big one scheduled for tomorrow.
So why is this difficult for him? Why is this difficult for him?
And the flyer says they're taking to the street. That requires a permit. Mm-hmm. Now, I got a dumb question, and then Carlos can ask me another question as well, and then I'll concede my time back to Robert and Carlos. My question is this. The mayor showed up to a protest, I believe at the end of May, beginning of June, and then left. Is it really a good idea to show up to a protest in a large crowd, as Dr. Fauci said yesterday? Let's not call it a protest, just a large crowd, and then take home whatever you caught to a pregnant wife? I'm asking rhetorically.
Well, so when they say that they're taking it to the streets, does that mean that the Doobie Brothers are coming tomorrow, or?
My understanding is maybe in a sense the Doobie Brothers, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right. So why is it so difficult for this mayor to come clean and clear on permits regarding protests?
Carlos and Robert, he is coming very clean and very clear on this topic. How dare you even ask? Yep. That is my policy position. How dare you even ask? This is a movement. And by the way, I'm a minority mayor. Okay, so you can't even ask. Sorry, I took a number. I'm still waiting.
Wait, isn't that that seems to be an effective strategy, though, right? Isn't the argument with Secretary Levine? I'm transgender, so how dare you ask me questions about, my job that's being the point person on taking care of COVID? It's starting to become a recurring theme. Their actions can't be questioned because of immutable characteristics of them, because of their sexuality or because of their skin color.
Let me be crystal clear. Okay? Let us not allow the distraction to become the distraction. How you identify, what the race is, whatever discrimination you're going to claim, this show from the jump has disavowed all of it. All of it. Any discrimination, any bias, we've disavowed all of it from the jump. So for anybody to claim that we're now on this soapbox, that we're not disavowing certain things and discrimination of all forms, manner, fashion, it's just disingenuous on your part. What we're taking exception to are policy positions by administrations and elected and appointed officials.
So
did I get that wrong?
No, that's exactly
right.
right.
No, of course. So you want to invite the mayor on?
It's an open invitation.
You should. So I'll do it right now. We'd like you to come on. We'd like you to come on and talk to us genuinely about the problems that our community is going through right now and what your solutions to those problems are. And I'm going to be, and listen, we're going to be tough. We're a tough crowd. Just like Tucker Carlson was with Jim Jordan this week. Did you guys see that?
Yep.
Listen, Representative, I talk for a living, so I know what talk sounds like. We need solutions from you. What are you prepared to do? That was really tough. And then he tagged them with the fact that Google was his number 2 supporter financially. Right. Tucker was upset this week.
Yeah. Okay.
Regarding how he dealt with Jordan. That's the same exact way we're going to be with the mayor. Okay. And what I don't think the mayor understands is that we could be his very best friend if he just was a normal human being and acted like a normal politician, where we could try to help and because we love our city and we love our country. Okay. We don't think if the only arrogant thing that you could really claim to me about me is that, you know what? I've never met anyone who loves this country more than me. Equal to me? Well, they're on the show with me. More than me? No way.
And oh, by the way, if he declines the invitation, I'll give him one more. If you decline the invitation, Mr. Mayor, you can resign that day.
Well,
Because the pick and favorite media outlets, time for your administration, 8 months in, is over.
Right. So just give me 10 seconds on what happened there.
There are right to know requests that are going to be answered by the city of Williamsport and the Bureau of Police within the next week that I filed at the end of June, beginning of July. And you're going to find out who's actually running the city. Is it the mayor or is he being puppeted?
No. 10 seconds on why you're being excluded and others aren't.
Because he doesn't like what I have to say. He doesn't want to be challenged. He's the king of Williamsport now that he's been elected. And how dare you even question what I'm doing?
Right. So he's welcome to the Lion's Den. And
let me just.
And oh by the way, Mr. Mayor, I have a more direct line to the Secretary of Health and or the governor than you do. And you're a mayor. You're an elected official. What's
how
that?
Dare you? How dare you be white and do that?
Wait a minute. What?
Yeah. How dare you? Right?
I got news for everybody on
white
this show.
Supremacy.
Rob, I got news for you and the bride, as you expect, right?
Okay.
And I can tell this about all my kids too. Here's a little secret, Carlos. It's the same thing. We can't pick our parents.
Oh, no.
Oh. So, final comments, Todd.
I don't know. Is that a pretty good one to go off on? I don't know. There's a lot going on right now in the Myrtle Beach story. Can't really get into it too much, but there'll be stories over the next week to 10 days, 2 weeks on the Myrtle Beach story. Woke Begon may have a 5th chapter to it. Part 2 of the Derek Dixon has Jesse Smollett Holding My Beer has a part 2 in the works that'll probably be released here in the next couple of days. And what was so interesting to note is that story of the racial hoax being perpetrated at Wegmans and another retail establishment here locally in the Williamsport area. There were so much response to that, okay, and so many air quote flaws in the story that the admission on social media by the actor who admitted to playing the Wegmans store manager, it was so inaccurate, he deleted the post.
Right.
In the hours after the story.
What was the over-under? You said
24
by
hours.
11 o'clock. Oh, okay. I thought you said 11 o'clock that night. And he did it within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours, yeah.
Right. I think I won that. Yeah,
but no fear, Robert. I screenshotted it and reposted it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen, until next Saturday, you're allowed to now reclaim your time.
All right.
Robert
and by the way, this is the AG bar break when we're done with our show that we actually do get to go to the bathroom because the chairman allows us to.
Yeah. Real class you got there.
Yeah.
Class act, fellas. Class act.
So.
And if you put that through the translator, that's not what he was saying.
Right.
Yeah, no, I know. Robert Knorr, final comments, buddy.
Yeah, so just real quick on just clean up a couple things. Look, none of us are expecting our leaders to be perfect. In fact, we don't even mind our leaders to make decisions that we might initially disagree with. All we're asking is them to be transparent for the reasons behind their motivations and to apply consistency to it. So if you tell us we have to socially distance, the bare minimum is you should be adhering to those orders as well as we are. If you're the mayor over there in Williamsport, all we're asking is if you say it's important to follow these laws, go through and issue permit. We're not even saying don't issue the permit. No one's saying that. We're just saying, is it okay for some people to break the law and not others? Right? That's all we're asking. And so that's our point. We're not saying, Monday morning quarterbacking, we could have done things better. We are saying that in part, but I don't blame people for making decisions that maybe didn't work out as long as they were transparent and they were consistent with those positions. Real quick, we didn't talk about a couple stories that were important. I'll just briefly mention them. The Democrat treatment of Barr at the hearing about him, because Barr is someone who potentially, I have my problems with Barr, but potentially could out the criminal nature of Obama and the Democratic Party and their spying on Donald Trump, was appalling. And it goes to show, even at the highest levels, how disgusting they are. The joke we've been making the whole time, for those of you who didn't see, is they ask Barr a million questions, and then Barr will be like, well, let me respond to that. And they go, I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my time. So they just ask him questions and then don't leave him respond, which is absolute nonsense and worthless. So that's worth checking out. Also worth checking out that, more documents are coming out about the potential Epstein situation, connections to Bill Clinton and others. I don't know if those are true. I'm not saying that. All I'm going to say is, how do you think it would look if the connections released in these documents were Donald Trump or other prominent conservatives that were against the establishment, like Jim Jordan or Mark Meadows or Rand Paul, etc.? It would be a different story. But because they've allowed noted philanderer and sexual assault accused Bill Clinton to get away with his crimes for over 20 years, they're not going to start holding to him to account now. The last thing I'll say is, I kind of finish this every week with this, is you can't rely on leadership, right? Be the change that you want to see. What we could all do individually is stop cowing down to the mob. Start speaking up against the tyranny we see every day. Don't allow them to take these small infringements on your rights, because eventually they'll become large infringements. They're burning the Bible now. They're using violence, and it's being covered for by Democrats in Congress. Nadler says, what violence? That's all a myth. This is a lie. They're coming after you. They're prosecuting people that are trying to defend themselves because they won't allow the police to defend them. And it's going to get much, much worse. It might not get worse this year, particularly if Biden wins, because they'll pull the attack dogs back then. But the deal they are making is this: you will give us power forever, or we will destroy you. And if we don't start as individuals taking the first step to say, we don't fear you, we're not going to fall to this cancel culture, we're not going to be silenced out of fear. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. We have a legacy of people that had bravery, that stood up under penalty of death to fight for what was right and to fight for freedom. We're not going to be the generation that allows this country to fall to tyranny. If we all make that decision within our own lives and start acting accordingly, then we will eventually see leaders that spring up that we can get behind, that share those values, instead of the worthless ones that we see now that either hate this country or they're too cowardly to defend it.
Thank you, Robert. A comment on Barr. I didn't bring it up because Barr slaughtered them.
Yep.
Barr slaughtered them. It wasn't even fair. With respect to slaughter, I've said before that his 100 days, I don't know, it's an incomplete, because I'm not sure when the 100 days started, but I will tell you this: he appointed Adam Winder to run RVT, and that goes to show me that he didn't have a plan to replace Bill Nichols Jr. He didn't have a plan. That's why he appointed Winder, which is a Streets and Parks director. Okay, so why would you fire a guy 6 months ago to then replace him with a guy from another department if you were looking on Indeed and other places and you posted the job? You didn't have a plan. So, life goes on. And yeah, what Robert said is right. We start fixing things by voting. But it's more than that. It's, the one thing that life continuously tests you on is what you know. So you got to get stronger at that. You got to get stronger on the things that you know, and you got to get stronger on the value that you attach to what you know. Okay. You got to get stronger on the Constitution. You got to get stronger on the Bill of Rights. You got to get stronger on your personal individual rights. You have to understand that having responsibility is what makes those rights valuable. And you have to get stronger in strengthening your own character. That's how we start to take back the ground that we've lost over 60 years of losing the culture war. So I guess the thing that I always tell you at the end is, we will never give up any ground. We will never retreat. So think about that and harness that and embrace that. Do not give up any ground and do not retreat. Until then, we'll see you next week.